I was giving a tour of Goat Island to my neighbor, and he had a friend with him, and we're walking up to the lighthouse, and I heard her. She leaned over and whispered, "This place is haunted." And I heard it, and I said, "I hope so." So I said, my best friend was here. This is where he'd want to be. So we're walking up the stairs to the lighthouse, and we get up to the landing where just before you get up into the gallery, and she grabs my arm and says, "Dick is here. He's desperately trying to communicate with you. I'm sorry to say this." She says, "I don't normally tell people that I have this sense. He wants you to know that he's safe, that he's at peace, nothing to worry about." And I'm like, what the heck? My hair is standing up on my head. I'm like, what? Not something I was expecting. So we went up, did the tour of the lighthouse, and then later on we were down on the boat ramp. And this woman was sitting on the boat ramp, and it's not a real comfortable thing to sit on the rails, but she's sitting there, and she's got her hand in her head in her hands, and she starts talking about stuff. She says, "Dick wants you to know that when he's here, when his presence is here, he will make himself known electronically somehow." I'm like, good, because I'm numb as they come when it comes to any extrasensory stuff, so if he makes it blatant, then that works. And then, I think I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I was told is Dick would make himself known electronically when he was on the island. Well, there's no doubt about it. I think it started with, remember, Bob, we were at that lobster, we were having a lobster bake. It was like in October, and I think we had like 15 people around the table. Everybody's talking, and all of a sudden there was a moment of silence, and the hood fan goes on full blast over on the stove, which is across the room. And then both Bob and I looked at one another and both acknowledged our eyes me and says, "Dick." I said, "Yeah, all right." And then one thing that happened, ironically, was that I told him, I says, "You got to let me know when you're here." And I said, so every time I would land on the island, I would land on the North Beach, and I would walk right up to the berm of the beach, and no matter what the weather was, the foghorn would toot once. And I'd just, I'd go on, I'd talk to him. I'd say, "Hey, Dickie, how you doing today?" Boop. And then when I got to the same spot, every time, that went on for, at least 3 years. So one of the very first Flying Santa visits that we had, they were early in the morning. It was in the winter time, so it was cold. And when our kids got older, I started shuttling other families out there so that there were some young kids to meet Santa. And this particular year, it was cold and windy, and I think I first headed out at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and now it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. I had gotten everybody out there, gotten everybody back, and I was shivering, I was tired, and I sat down in Dick's reclining chair, and I'm just sitting there going, like this, and I said, "Dickie, if you're here, give me some heat." So the heater, we had an electric heater in the living room that hadn't worked for years, and I no sooner said that, and I hear tick, 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 and the heater comes on. It warmed up the room. I fell asleep, and it never worked again. So you make up your mind, but I am convinced. Oh, and I guess the last thing that comes to mind on a Dick story was he was always flag crazy. I mean, he loved to fly flags. Anytime somebody came from another country, he would run out and buy their flags, put it up, and celebrate them coming out. So a bunch of years ago now, probably 5-6 years ago, President Bush hosted President Putin at Walker's Point. And so we ended up getting a Russian flag and an American flag, and put them side by side, which you're never supposed to do. It was very symbolic of we weren't getting along well with Russia, and it was pointed over towards the Bush compound, and it was basically meant as, you know, we gotta get along. And sure enough, when I was leaving the island, President Bush Sr. was coming into the harbor. He did see it. They stopped and they were taking pictures of it. And on the way out, when President Putin visited, we have a picture taken from Charlie Wright's webcam of the two President Bushes and President Putin going by the lighthouse. So he brought him over and told them, see, our people want us to work together. And after I had put the flags up, I had trouble getting them adjusted and getting them to lay properly. So I come down, I'm like, okay, that's it. I finally got it. And I said, okay, Dickie, what do you think about that? The foghorn starts. Well, it went off for probably almost the next 2 years. The Coast Guard put 9 new fog detectors on there, and at one point totally disconnected the power. So there's no power to the thing, and it's still blasting. So again, you tell me. What do you think?